How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Some great news for this Cincinnati Bengals offseason coming out of Joe Mixon camp here. Right off the bat, there's a lot of people talking about cutting Joe Mixon. We was part of a lot of people. There was also a lot of talk about one particular thing, though, which was if Joe Mixon were to take a pay cut, no problems at all with this man staying on a football team. Joe Mixon is still the best running back on this football team. Joe Mixon is still arguably the best possible running back out there between him and the free agencies. Or free agent running backs, we should say. So there's no question about it. I mean, you wasn't going to upgrade much from the pro. The question was you willing to pay a running back? And the answer is always going to be no until somebody out there does it. In the past decade and a half, there hasn't been a team that's won a Super Bowl paying a running back. So until somebody proves that's the way to win a Super Bowl, the answer is always going to be no. Especially when the production ain't there. And Joe Mixon's production in the last year and a half, it hasn't been as good as it was, 3-4 years ago when he was, earning that contract. And Joe Mixon stops and looks and says, hey, I get it. I understand. There's some dogs on this team that need to be paid. I want to be a part of this football team, though. I want to play out my career as a Cincinnati Bengal. And Joe Mixon does something no one's done before for the Cincinnati Bengals. And he comes out and restructures a deal to stay on the Cincinnati Bengals. Respect. A whole lot of respect gained for Joe Mixon by me personally, at least. This is, again, you had the stuff before he was drafted. You had the stuff coming out in the offseason. The off-the-field allegations we're talking about, of course. Then you had the on-the-field stuff. He likes to trash talk. Was he backing some of it up? Some people get a little upset by him, motivating the opponent, running the mouth. I love me a good rivalry. I love me a good storyline. I think it's fun. If people play better, which always interests me because we're all Bengals fans. It always interested me how people got upset by, maybe it's Joe Mixon or Jamar Chase or somebody saying something to an opponent. Like, why would we get upset about the trash talk? Because Chad Ochocinco was a Cincinnati Bengal, and he pretty much set the standard. He made it known, like, listen, the trash talk motivates me. The trash talk makes me play better. And when he went to New England, they shut that out. He disappeared. Nonetheless, whatever, all that said, you kind of really, in my opinion, one of the most selfless things, arguably the most selfless thing you can do as a professional athlete on a team organized sport is take a pay cut. Because you signed that contract, that money's guaranteed. You earn that contract at some point in time. There's nothing that needs to make you say, let me give some of that back. And nobody does it. Rarely does somebody do it when they're underperforming. So for Joe Mixon to look back and say, hey, I see where I'm at in this team. I see where my production's been. I see there's mouths on this team that need to be fed. I'm willing to take a pay cut. I'm willing to restructure this contract if it increases my chances of staying in Cincinnati and increases my chances of winning a Super Bowl. And again, you have to give Joe Mixon a whole lot of respect for being willing to do that and being willing, again, to kind of set the standard. He is an older player on this team. He's 27, coming up on 27. He is an older, more of a veteran style player on this team. Sets the tone for this team. We've seen Tyler Boyd do it. We haven't seen him do it, but we've seen him do it in an interview. Talk about, hey, listen, I want to be a Bengal. It ain't about the money. I'm sure I can get more money somewhere else, but he kind of alluded to the idea that I'll take less to play here. And to see that is becoming the culture, it is becoming a bit of the standard by these veterans on this team. It is so important when it comes to, again, not just winning a championship, because, the reason people say Bengals is Super Bowl bust type of year for them is because when they start paying that quarterback, they're not going to have money to go around. And that is a big problem a lot of franchises have. It's difficult. Joe Burrow might throw over 6,000 yards, but if they can't pay players on defense or if they can't pay an offensive line, we've seen what can happen. So it is extremely difficult to get into that dynasty status once you pay your quarterback, if you will. And when you set the tone, you set the culture of, hey, we're willing to take money off the table here and here. We're not selfish. We're not thinking about ourselves. It is team first. And this is how I prove I'm team first. It's huge. And maybe it's not the standard forever. Maybe it is. I think it's one of those things you kind of have to cherish it as a Bengals fan right now. What's happening in Cincinnati right now and saying, hey, the dominoes are falling in the proper direction here for the Cincinnati Bengals to be a really good football team for a very long time. Now, this Joe Mixon contract's only a couple years, but again, to see what's being built in Cincinnati, to see that, guys are willing to stay here because of Joe Burrow and company to win games, win championships. There's not a lot of teams. There might be one or two that you can name, probably the Chiefs, possibly the Eagles, where you could say players feel like taking a pay cut and restructure that deal to win a championship there. I don't think anybody else in the league can look at that and feel that way. Personal opinion, maybe San Francisco, but that's my opinion. I think the Bengals are in that conversation. It is very difficult to get into that conversation. And once you get into that conversation, once you get into that area, that is where you become a Super Bowl contender year in and year out, a legit one. Not a like we like to think of it like a Drew Brees one where it's like Drew Brees gonna go out there and throw for 5,000 yards and 50 TDs, but the defense can't hold up because they can't pay him or kind of deal. So I do think it's a good sign for the Bengals. I think it's massive. A lot of respect gained for Joe Mixon here. It was a big thing for him to do, selfless thing for him to do. He wants to be a Bengal. Love to see it. Love you guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.